There was a moment that a whole bunch of stuff was happening in my life all at once. And in this time, it was my first car had broken down in the middle of the street. I'd managed to get it somewhere and gotten an Uber. I was crying and talking on the phone with somebody, and the Uber driver said to me, "Wow, you have such a beautiful voice." And I thought, ma'am, like, do you not see what's going on here? Like, read the back of the car. But even though it was out of place, a bit off, I was really appreciative of it because it did shift my energy. It was so simple, but I didn't even know how much something so simple like that in that moment really did something to me. It really impacted me in a way. As life be lifing and as we're experiencing new things and endeavors, life's simple things tend to get forgotten or trivialized. Weekly quickies, your simple, your basic, your quick dose of good vibes only. If you would like to receive weekly exclusive content from me and join the private Legit Hub, then go to bissybrima.com.
So I know that you got a degree in communications engineering, and I wanted you to, if you could talk about what kinds of jobs you can get with that kind of degree.
Communications engineering basically refers to a lot of things relating to telecoms. So you could get a job from the telecoms industry, which is everything that facilitates access to internet, as well as phone calls and the likes. So that's pretty much the whole telco space. But also there are some branches that also refer to application development, networking. There's a bunch of opportunities when you study that kind of course. It's a pretty good course for this century or for this time that we're in.
Okay. And I know, so when you started out, when you went into college, did you have a goal or a vision of what you wanted to do post college?
Yeah. No. Well, in a way, yeah. Well, yes and no. I think I wanted to. So I think earlier on in life, I wanted to be an astronaut. I think everybody wanted to be an astronaut at some point in their lives. And I was one of those guys who also wanted to be an astronaut. When, the reality is, I studied in Nigeria. It's difficult for you to move from Nigeria to, there are no courses for, to become an astronaut. Or there's no path for you to become an astronaut from studying, in the secondary school in Nigeria. So I had to, look for other realistic dreams, I guess. And aviation was the next thing, which is I wanted to become a pilot, but my parents couldn't afford it. So I had to look for something else. So, at that point, then I stumbled on information communications engineering, which looked pretty interesting, and it was pretty different from what every other person in my class was doing. So it looked interesting to me. Did I know what I wanted to do after I bagged the degree in communications engineering?
Okay.
No. I just knew that I wanted to be rich and not end up like my parents.
Yeah.
And when I say not end up in my parents, I mean a lot of Nigerian people, a lot of folks who grew up in Nigeria that had their parents work in the civil service would probably tell you that their parents worked for an organization for say 30 years and were expecting to get their the pension, after 30 years, but unfortunately, they didn't get that. So I wanted to kind of have that in my control, have, my own career and my future in my control. So I knew that I also wanted to own a business. So that's how it sort of played out. But no, I didn't have an idea of what I was going to do.
Yeah,
after
I think it's really cool that you took a note of not wanting to do things differently than your parents did. Because, taking inventory, we can see the impact of, how they lived their lives, but also they did based on the things that they knew, right, at that time. So it's great to be able to say, okay, I know this and I would choose differently, or I would add to it, or whatever it is. You did mention that you started but you wanted to be rich, which I'm here for. And so you started a business, which is Grid, that we're going to talk about. And I know Grid uses solar powered code boxes, or at least that's how you started, to store and transport temperature sensitive commodities. But now you've pivoted. Can you talk more about that? Why you pivoted, and why you transitioned?
Yeah, I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes when we start off, we tend to think about the first encounter is usually a problem that resonates with you. The reason why I started the business in the first instance was because I had made some investments in agriculture and incurred huge losses as a result of a lack of cold storage facilities close to me.
Okay.
Right. And that was the problem I had at the time. And I felt that there were millions of people. When you look at the data, they tell you, in Nigeria alone, you have 25 million smallholder farmers, that lack access to this sort of infrastructure, but until you actually go into the business, you don't understand some of the challenges, right? And how you can actually address some of these challenges. So at first we went on, trying to build the infrastructure, but it was really expensive. The technology we built at the stage where we were wasn't big enough and suitable for the agricultural space. It was also quite expensive. Well, I would say expensive in the sense that, as you know, in most developing countries, smallholder farmers don't make a lot of money. And they're also very skeptical of new technologies. So we had no money in the bank, or little money in the bank. So we had to kind of figure out, look, how do we move this business forward? So we started to look at a different sector, which was the healthcare sector. And when we tried to, deploy our technology there as well, we discovered that, there were a lot of regulations that we had to undergo. But we also didn't have the capital for that. But what resonated with a lot of the businesses that we spoke to at the time was that the monitoring aspect of your technology was really, really interesting. Of our technology is really, really interesting. And when we looked at it, pulling out that monitoring technology was going to significantly cut the cost of production for us. It was also going to, help us get the traction that we require as soon as possible. So we kind of made that pivot. And plus it was 2020 as well. A really tough year, as you know. Yes. So you needed to spend the little that you had to achieve the most that you could get. And so, that's what we did. And, it ended up, working out. So we made that pivot into, providing monitoring services for a lot of the companies. And now we're currently making use of the data that we've been gathering for the past 3 years to now help insurance companies insure some of the products that are being transported across the cold chain.
What kind of products is this data good for?
So the data is good for a lot of products, actually. Let's start with probably the most obvious ones. So things like your meat, your cheese, your milk, vaccines, insulin, chemotherapy medication, but even your everyday Panadol or paracetamol or your malaria medication, they need to be stored under certain conditions. And this is very relevant, especially in the pharmaceutical space, where businesses store large inventory of pharmaceutical products. So it's important that they store it under the right conditions, else it renders the products useless or impotent, right? So there's a ton of products that this could be applicable to.
That's really cool. Like as you were talking, I was thinking about, so I'm in the US and sometimes we would go into the African stores to get some things and they're expired, but then they're selling it anyway. So is this kind of something that grid will solve? Like, is this an area, an avenue?
Well, yeah. A part of our mandate is actually to introduce traceability into the supply chain. So with one of our products, yes, it does solve it, but on a surface level and not to complicate things. We just on the surface level and not to complicate things, we just provide that visibility into how products are stored, what the storage conditions are, as well as some quantitative data, which your expiry date applies to.
Yeah, I think it's so cool that you came up with this idea. I know it came out of your own loss of something that you made an investment in, but how did you make it like a tangible thing? Like, did you have other people that you worked with? Was there a team?
Well, yeah, generally, yes. At first, the team is small, but yes, we had people, from day one that supported the project, people like Richard, and yes, it's grown from a team of, of 2 people to a team of, about 26 people right now.
Wow.
Who are focused on, different aspects of business, including, customer support, sales, accounting, embedded systems engineering, software development, so there's a lot of teams right now in the business, taking care and ensuring that everything, that the wheel keeps spinning and that growth, happens year on year.
So what's the top industry that Grid supplies to or gives this data?
Yeah, so we currently do a lot in the healthcare space. And that's because largely when you look at the healthcare space, the unit price per commodity is often higher in comparison to other sectors where, we find the product applicable, such as agriculture, right? So the healthcare space plays a huge role. I mean, the healthcare space is one of the biggest sectors that we currently, serve. Then second would be agriculture.
So you mentioned that the team grew from 2 to about, now 26. How do you determine two-part question. How do you determine who to add to your team and who to not just in like a role to fill, but like in the person's personality and who they are? And second is, how did Grid, like, what was the transition like from small business or just like a startup to now, something bigger? And not just in terms of people, but just in the terms of like the demand and you supplying that.
So how do you identify people you want roles to fill within the organization? I would say you may want to start off by outsourcing your weaknesses.
Okay.
Right.
That's a good point.
So I think one of the first departments I got on board was my accounting department, because I have no clue as to what, the basics of accounting. And I've been learning, on this journey. So yes, the accounting team was one of the first that, we're able to bring on board. Secondly was software, because I could code earlier on in the days, but as you grow, there's a lot on your plate, so you want to outsource that because your product is also heavily dependent on that. For a long time, I was on sales. I just started to set up a sales team last year. Beginning of last year. So a long time I was on sales, handling sales alone, because I think one of my strengths is being able to speak and being able to understand customers' needs. So I think I made, a decent salesman, not the best, but I made a decent salesman. So I think that was one of the last departments we kind of built out. So I think first outsource your weaknesses, focus on your strengths, and then you can keep, going that way. In terms of personality, I think in general, your organization should have a culture, and you want to hire based off on that culture. For us, the key things for us in my company in Greek is one, we want people that are hungry. And when I say hungry, I mean people that are hungry to learn.
Okay. Yeah.
So we aim for people who probably don't know it all, but are willing to learn, right? So we constantly, every quarter, each team member or each department has an option to take on courses that helps them improve in aspects that they're not very good at, right? So that's one of the cultures in our in the organization, which is continuous learning. So that is one thing that we've been able to sustain, year on year within the organization. So we look out for that seriously. The second one is also, respecting people's differences. So I may not, and also as a CEO or as a lead in the organization, sometimes you there's this tendency to believe that you're always right because you've been doing this and, you're probably the supreme leader, right?
Yes.
But I've also come to learn that when you're hiring different people, you're hiring them for their knowledge, and you're hiring them for their experiences as well. And so it's important that you take into consideration those differences that they may have from your opinion and always give it a try, right? So that way you kind of spur growth, you kind of spur confidence in the team as well. So those are some of the things that, we try to, we look out for respecting people's differences, your continuous growth. I think those are some of the key things that we look out for when we're hiring to fill, role.
Sometimes at the end of the day or week, I'm like, what did you do? The principle of marginal gains, getting better by 1% consistently over time, can lead to tremendous success. I partnered with Skillshare to create a course that gives you the tools to be less busy and more productive while attaining your legit goal, a goal that is true to you and the season that you're in. Click the link in the description box below to get 30-day free membership on Skillshare on me. I hope it helps.
Yeah, I want to echo what like the top three things for me was outsourcing your weaknesses. I think, and maybe as such, starting out, you have to do almost everything, but as you see that it's something that's, really growing, to outsource weaknesses is a really big thing. And then also knowing your company's culture and then hiring, you mentioned hiring somebody that you can learn, somebody who's hungry to learn. And I remember somebody said to me that you can hire skill, but what you can teach skill. And like you're saying, you can teach somebody, but you can't teach passion and somebody's eagerness to learn. So those are really good points that you mentioned. I do know that you are a thinker and you're always thinking. And so as somebody who's always thinking of ways to solve problems, come up with solutions, how do you filter through what to capitalize on and what to let go?
Yeah, I think one key thing that I learned early on in the entrepreneurial journey is you're building a solution to a problem, right? And that's really, really key. Sometimes as founders, we build problems or we build solutions and start to look for problems, right? To those solutions. And it's supposed to be reverse the case, right? Where you identify a problem that sometimes resonates with you, or sometimes, like us, what we've done is constantly interact with customers and understand where their pain points lie. And that way, where to build. That just gives you direction on where to build, going forward, right? I'll give you a practical example. We've been doing, monitoring for say 2-3 years for a number of customers, right? But one of the major issues that we discovered was a lot of the customers could not access things like basic insurance for the cold chain products, right? And that's as a result. That's as a result of the historicals for the cold chain space in Nigeria or in a lot of developed countries. So what we've done is, how could we use this data, what we have today, to collaborate with people who can help and create a solution to help our customers ease that pain that they currently have. And, so we doubled down on that. And then, we built a new product that, and got partners who are willing to kind of push it forward. So I think that, you need to see where the pain is coming from, and you need to build something that, eases that pain. That way, customers are willing to pay, right? And then when customers are willing to pay, your product can grow, because you always need, customers to buy the product. Else, whatever you have is just fancy and probably wouldn't go anywhere. So yes, identifying that pain point and ensuring that that pain point is actually, a headache, because there's also something that we learned early on in one of our accelerators was through one of the accelerators is the problem your customer experiencing, is it a vitamin or is it let me rephrase. The solution that you have, is it a vitamin or is it a painkiller, right? So a vitamin, I probably wouldn't take that every day. I mean, I can use it here and there and I'll still be fine, right? But is it a painkiller? A painkiller, if you've ever had to, undergo surgery before, and, that healing process, you always need your painkillers, right? And at that point, nobody's really asking how much is it. Just take my money and let me feel some relief. So that's similar way to look at it in business. So identifying if it's a vitamin or it's a painkiller is a very key component to building or knowing where to double down on as a business.
What would you say is, if it's a vitamin, would you say it's not something to capitalize on?
So frankly speaking, it could be.
Okay.
I'm not saying don't capitalize on it, but I'm saying learn from it. Right? Sometimes when you're building a product, you think you're building a painkiller, but what you're actually
It's a vitamin. Okay. So just to know what you're, okay.
But when you start, once you get in front of the customer always leads you in the right direction.
Right.
I think it's kind of a fact. I think customers always want you to solve their problems. And customers are always willing to divulge that information. Like, oh, look, if you could do this for me, you'll be, saving me millions of this, or you'll be helping my business, or you'll be helping, my role in this organization. So customers are always willing to share that information, but you just have to listen. And then you can build from there. And, once you have that vitamin, sometimes it may just be a few features that you need to add to the product that makes it a real painkiller, So I'm not saying don't pursue the vitamin. Sometimes go in, start first, and then you learn and build something stronger.
Yeah, that's good. That's really helpful. I think it's just being clear on what your business is providing and moving in that direction and seeing how to pivot. That's really good. So, what is one thing that you wish you had known when you started out launching Grid or as a business owner?
I think one I had known. I mean, I wish I had known I was stronger than I thought I was back then.
Wow. Okay.
Right. Because I made a lot of mistakes, especially in my early business years, trying to form partnerships with people who you think will make you stronger. But in the real sense of it, you actually had all the power all this time. Right? You probably wasted a lot of time, doubting yourself, thinking, oh, if I partnered with A or I partnered with B, I would go along further. Yeah. I wish I probably just decided to take my baby steps, no matter how small they were, every day, and pursued it for as long as I could. I probably would be, farther down the road than I am today, right? So I think we all doubt ourselves. We all have that, imposter syndrome. Yeah. So if there was anything I could tell myself, and I try to tell a lot of people these days, like, yo, go ahead. If you want to do this thing, go ahead. You have everything that you require to make this thing work. Every other thing is probably just an excuse, but take your baby steps. Meet a customer, take your baby steps, draft the document, take your baby steps.
Wow.
build your website, do whatever it may be
Yeah.
that you think you need someone else to do, and see how far it goes. People see that, people see the effort, and people recognize the effort. And you may find the right person who is willing to, back you. You may
Partner
find
with
the right
you.
person who is willing to adopt it, and
Yeah.
you go from there.
That's so good. I was reading this book that it's called The Motivation Myth, and it talks about just getting what you need to get done for the day and not thinking about, the big picture or what's ahead. And that really does make a difference. Like if you do that consistently over time, it really does compound. So that's really, really good to hear again and helpful. So what is your go-to strategy to staying focused and de-stressing when things get a little bit stressful?
Um, Key to stay focused.
Well, your go-to,
Frankly
just your
speaking,
own
I don't
go-to.
know. I just have this. I think I've worked a lot all my life. I
Mm,
mean, pretty much from secondary school. I've always been this guy who probably reads the hardest or
okay.
reads the longest,
Okay.
or being the guy who wants to, go the extra mile to ensure that he makes, you know, reaches the goal that he has, or always been that type of person.
Mm,
So I think it's become a habit, just, doing everything that whatever it takes to ensure that, we hit the goal. And so now if I'm not working, I don't feel like I'm leaving in a
mm,
way.
mm,
But yes, it also comes with stress. But I think for me, how do I, distress? I think spending time with family
okay.
is always the greatest reliever for me.
Okay.
Spending time with family is always the greatest reliever for me. So I try to spend, my weekends with the family. It really, really helps.
Okay. So what is your favorite and least part of being a business owner?
I think the favorite bit about being a business owner is watching your creation get adopted.
Mm,
I think that would be it. So this crazy idea you probably had a couple of days ago, a couple of months ago, that seemed far fetched and foolish. Someone has paid for it. Oh, two people have paid for it. Oh, you made your first $100,000.
yeah.
It's exciting. I think seeing that grow, and seeing a customer say yes, this is brilliant. I think that's like the best part of being a business owner. The hardest part, I think you can't stay excited for too long. I think that's the saddest part about being a business
Mm,
owner.
wow.
If you make $1 million today, next year you have to make $2 million.
Yeah.
If you close a deal worth, $500,000 today, tomorrow you need to wake up and figure out how to, probably close 600, 700. So there's always that constant challenge in front of you. So
Mm,
there's no point where uh, drop your guns and just party. So no,
mm,
I think probably until you exit the business, and I'm yet to exit this business. So probably when you exit the business, then you probably feel that joy of, oh, we built it to this level and we exited.
yeah.
But yeah,
Wow,
I
that's so
think I think
good. You
that
can't be
that would be
excited for
the
too
hardest part
long.
about being a business owner.
That's really good. So, what does exiting the business look like for you? What's your next steps?
Next steps, I think we're still focused on just building more value for our customers right now, building more value for our for the customers. So that's the focus for the next couple of years. But obviously, as you build more value, there's always going to be a point where consolidation may be necessary,
Mm,
especially in Africa where we're building a new ecosystem and we're trying to build markets for the future for the continent. Consolidation is going to happen, and you want to build enough value to either be the one who consolidates other businesses into yours, or you want to consolidate into others.
other businesses,
So
yeah.
I think that over the couple of years, I mean, in the next couple of years, excuse me, in the next couple of years, we would have built significant value to be a part of, or to be a part of a larger organization, and that's the way we're thinking about possible exits.
That sounds exciting, and I wish you all the best with that. So we've reached the conclusion part of our episode. Is there any? I have a specific question. What would you say, or what kind of advice would you give for anyone who's pitching their product or service to specific organizations?
I think to specific organizations, you have to do your research first to see if there's value. But in some cases as well, you also need to position the value, what's in it for the company first, not what's in it for you, right? Because I don't want to, when people pitch, sometimes it's more about, okay, you can either be here as a vulture, right? You're here to pick on, stuff that you can find, or you can be the guy who is coming to, solve the problem, right? You could be Buzz Lightyear, so you can either be one of those two people. So when you come into the company, you need to do your research, ensure that, there's value that you're, providing. And then secondly, you need to ensure that, you're solving a problem. And then thirdly, you also need to be able to, you need to create a relaxed atmosphere where there's a lot of questions. And when I say questions, I know usually you present and then you get the audience to ask you questions. You also need to ask the audience questions, because when you're presenting, you're also sort of like on a fact-finding mission, especially your very first presentation. So those are some of the key things that I think could be valuable to pitching. And just do it. You might be scared, but just do it.
Okay, sounds good. Do you have any last words for maybe an entrepreneur or somebody in your industry?
I think my words would be to basically just encourage a lot of folks. I know right now, 2023, the ecosystem is tough. We keep hearing about a lot of businesses closing. It's a tough ecosystem right now, and that's just a fact. But I think that value would always sell, which means that if you're providing value, you're going to find a customer. And when you find a customer, you're going to find more customers, right? So long as you provide a great service. So I encourage, people to still do what they want to do, still purchase the dream. To still, pursue the dream that they want to, pursue, because this cycle will pass, and, you would probably be better for it at the end of the day.
That's good. That's good. Thank you so much for that, Tega. So we're in the session where we're going to play a little game. It's fun. It's just random questions. Okay. And so the first is, I don't know, the last time we spoke, I know you were in the UK. Do you travel a lot?
Well, when you say a lot, what do you mean? I mean, frequently or multiple locations?
Like frequently, like maybe your business requires you to be in different places, or maybe just for fun too.
Yes.
Okay. So,
I don't think I've traveled for fun.
Okay. Wow. This is the second time. I spoke with someone yesterday and he said the same thing. He's never traveled for fun. Would you like to, or for leisure?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could, but not yet.
Not yet.
It's not the right time.
Okay. So here's the question. I know I've asked questions before, but like, what's one African country that you haven't been that you would want to go to? Morocco. Okay. When you're buying items for yourself, this is a this or that, would you prefer like a brand name or just generic?
Yeah, I don't really care much about brand names. I think I would buy a generic product, so long as it ticks all the boxes for me.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, cool. Finish the sentence. From time to time, it is good to
sleep.
You don't get enough sleep?
Well, No, I mean, I do get enough sleep, but I mean, from time to time, it's good to
It's
sleep.
good to sleep. Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. Well, thank you so much, Tega, for your time. Thank you for chatting with me and the audience of the Legit
Yeah, thank you.
podcast. Yeah, so this is it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.